All right, everybody, welcome back to Around the Draft with myself, Shane, Jake, and Dalton joining me like they did last week. Hopefully, we'll be able to get them all on every week the rest of the year. I know we had just Dalton on the first time. We mostly BS'd about the class, and now we're actually getting into the players in the class specifically. This week, we're targeting running backs, talking about maybe the best position group in the class potentially. It's not at a high premium position, obviously, but kind of maybe is starting to trend back that way with the way that the running game has returned in the NFL this year. So maybe teams are actually a little bit excited about that, especially maybe teams like your team, Jake and Dalton. I know that you guys are certainly interested in this group. I'm sure, being Raiders fans. As a Steelers fan, I'm kind of one foot in, 1 foot out because I don't really know what they're doing with the running back position. But you can never have too many running backs, too many guys that can tote the football. So we're going to talk about a lot of guys here. Our top 10 specifically, we'll have some honorable mentions, of course, with a class or with a position like running back that so many are going to get picked. We need to talk about more than just the top 10 guys. But overall, we'll start with you, Jake. How do you feel about the class to kind of live up to your expectations going in?
Yeah, it's very. This was far more enjoyable to scout than the quarterback position. I'd say it's
Yeah, I
like
mean, that's not a huge
in
bar to clear,
because
but yeah.
I did most of my watching of running backs this week after our QB's episode, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just night and day difference. But
Yeah.
I think it could be the deepest position in the entire class. I know we were talking before the episode about how many on our top 10 are still like day two picks. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that really just goes to show how deep the class is. But yeah, this is a much more entertaining episode than last week.
Yeah, we're hoping so at
Yeah,
least. Yeah.
yeah, it's a weird class in that, or it's weird with running backs how this is one of the deepest classes of any position group, but yet I don't know about you guys. I have one guy with a day one grade just because the
Mm-hmm.
value of the position.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
weird. You kind of have to grade it differently. Whereas like quarterbacks, yeah, I mean, if you're a true starter, you're getting a top 10 grade probably.
Yeah,
If
factoring
you're a good
positional
starter
value.
in the
Yeah.
league. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a running back, like to get a first round grade, you gotta be special.
Yeah.
In at least some way. Um, and so I think just because we have a day 2 or 3 grade on a guy, or round 2 or 3 grade on a guy, doesn't mean they're not going to be a very productive player in this league. I think there's a lot of really good backs that are going to go on day 2.
Yeah, I think I have just in general like about 7 or 8 guys who I view as like legitimate like lead running back types, right? Where they should be the lead carry getter on an offense and justifiably so, right? And then you have a bunch of guys who like could do that, but also probably better as like more of a role player or at least part of a committee. But in general, like all these guys we're going to talk about today, all the way down to 15 in some cases for, at least me, I know I watch 15 guys, they're all NFL players and guys who should have roles, right? And when you're talking about position group, no matter how many guys are in it, you get down to 15 in any group and you're still talking about like starting caliber potentially, or at least like contributors. It's pretty good for any position group. So should be a lot of fun. We'll get into a bunch of the top guys obviously later on, but my favorite part of this, honestly, a lot of the time is like the guys right at the back end of this group, right? Like guys that people aren't going to talk about as much, but you watch for like that dude can play. It's just he's just not spoiler alert, Action Genti. He's not him, but nobody seems to be. So it's kind of hard to compare those two. But in
Yeah.
general, like there's gonna be a lot of guys that are really good players that aren't drafted even on day 2. So that's kind of the way the position works. So, but you mentioned it, Dalton. Like one day one grade realistically for most people is how this is going to be. There's guys who might sneak into first round consideration ultimately, but I think that in general, there's one dude who we have no idea how high he could go, but we know it will be high most likely. And
Yeah.
then everyone kind of jockeying for position at that point behind him. So, we'll see how that ultimately plays out. But let's start with our honorable mentions, get those guys out of the way. Which, hey, some of these guys are probably going to be in our top 10. So we'll see, like each other's top 10. So we'll see how that goes. But Jake, let me let you kick it off here. Who would be your first honorable mention that you want to kind of throw out there?
My first honorable mention is Taj Brooks
Ooh,
out of Texas Tech.
okay.
He's a pretty talented back. I just have him as an honorable mention because I think in the NFL he's gonna have to rely on the scheme a bit more than some of the other backs in this draft. He's very productive at Texas Tech. He's a very hard runner. Is one of the main things I noticed on his film. And another thing that I noticed that um, I think is a very important thing for running backs is their pass protection, and that was one
Mhm.
thing that really stood out to me with him. He was great in pass protection from what I saw, but in terms of athleticism, I mean, he doesn't. We kind of talked about this before the episode about how a lot of backs in this, especially at the bottom
Yeah.
half of our list, kind of don't really have that top end speed. That's how I feel about Brooks. He can accelerate decently quickly, but in terms of overall speed, it's pretty average. So I think I don't know. He can fit very well in a specific scheme if he goes to the right place in the draft. But I think his ability to produce is going to be more related to that than some of the other backs, which is why I had him as an honorable mention.
Yeah. Good
Yeah,
dog.
he's kind of around there for me too. I mean, I love the pass protection. His ability as a blocker is great, but yeah, the just 5'10", 230 for a running back is going to be tough to translate to the NFL. He's one of a few guys in towards the back end that I could see having a career as a fullback possibly.
Like a
Um,
hybrid role, kind
yeah,
of like what I forget his name for the Chiefs. They're doing with him. I forget, but this year I forget his name off the top of my head
yeah,
right now. But similar to that type of thing, I think.
yeah. And I mean, I think the athletic fullback is starting to come back. That like
It's
H back
useful.
type role.
Yeah, it's gonna be useful. So Brooks is an interesting one because he's not in my honorable mentions. I didn't watch much of him mostly because I kind of feel like, and from the sounds of things from both of you, even though he's in your honorable mention, Jake, it's kind of what I thought. Where he is a really productive runner in college, but how much of it translates to an NFL
Yeah,
offense and what he can do. Um, yeah, I mean the yards after contact for somebody as big as him too. It's 3 or so yards per carry after contact, which is good, but it's not near the top of some of the other guys in this class. So even that element of his game might not be as good as some other guys. So in
yeah.
general, just kind of just yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say especially because that's one of his bigger strengths to me too.
Yeah. So
So that's
and it's
something
not that it's a weakness at all.
to get better.
Yeah, but it's definitely one of those things where it's like you're a little surprised that more of his yards don't come after contact just with the style. But hey, good blocking maybe there. So, but I'll throw out. This is my 15th player. I'll start down here. And it's really just because like I don't really know what to do with him because the production is very good, but I don't love the vision with him. Bashal Tootin, Virginia Tech running back, really explosive in a straight line. Could definitely break tackles pretty well, but I feel like there's a lot of times where I see him with his vision. I'm just like, I don't know if he sees the game super well at this point. And if you're obviously coming off of a really good season for Virginia Tech and kind of a surprise season, despite the fact that early on it didn't look so good. I remember, I think Dalton on the betting show, you're kind of high on them early in the year. Is that right? Potentially, and then it didn't
For
really work
me,
out.
I was having a lot of success, a lot of failures betting against Virginia Tech.
Right, that's right. Yeah,
I
you
get
were
that
having
up.
trouble betting against them. That's right.
Yeah.
But like he's a fun player. I think to me, he kind of profiles as just one of those like not so much scat backs, but like a change of pace back with speed that you can hope breaks one ever so often. Kind of just he was on the Bears for a while. Now as a Bengal, I can't think of his name right now, but um, man, they traded him to the Bengals. The Bears did. Can't. I wish I remembered his name. But he was kind of that way too, where it was just more of a change of pace. Wouldn't use him too much, but he would break off big plays occasionally. I think that's kind of what Tutin's role would be in the NFL.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
him
And
as an honorable mention also. Um, yeah, division, as you noted, that was one of the big things I noticed. And also, I don't. This isn't necessarily a big thing, but one thing when I was watching him was he seems to fumble more in the open field than like in between the tackles. Because
Yeah, he
there
had
was a few
four
times,
fumbles this year. Yeah.
yeah, there was
So
a few times where he would just like he'd have someone chasing up on him that he wouldn't see, and get it knocked out that way, which I thought was interesting. Because he doesn't really have. I mean, he's mostly able to protect the ball when he runs like up the middle, but it's
mhm.
more in that open field. I don't know if it's like a lack of
I
concentration or
think he
something.
gets loose with it a little bit because he's trying to
Yeah,
create instead of focus on that. A lot of running backs unfortunately deal with that.
yeah,
Sometimes, unfortunately.
yeah. And then one other thing that I would like to see a little bit more from him, and that's kind of why he was an honorable mention, is I think his route tree is pretty limited. The only times I really saw him involved in the passing game was as a check down option.
Yeah, a lot of guys like that. I
Over
feel
the
like right
ground.
now. Yeah,
Yeah,
agreed
yeah,
there.
yeah, I didn't watch much of him just because, yeah, like you guys mentioned, probably not like any potential to really be a true three down back.
No,
And there's a lot
100%.
of guys in this class that I think are going to minimum be really good change of pace backs, if
Yeah,
not the lead guy.
yeah.
Kind of the tricky
That's,
part.
that's kind of where I'm at with him too. Where again, I think he should get drafted on day 3 and probably have a role for a team even early on. But it just I don't know how big it could be because by the way, the player I was thinking it was Khalil Herbert, the running back. Is who I was trying to think of.
Gotcha.
Similar where like he's never really had a big role, but when he's played, he's broken up big plays. But I think there's probably a reason why he was never given a huge role because I don't think he's probably fit to do that a lot. But he's still been a valuable player when he's played for both the Bears and occasionally for the Bengals so far. So very interesting player. We'll see if where he gets drafted because I think the speed will kind of maybe bump him up a little bit over some of the guys that are in this range potentially. But we'll see. Dalton, who's your first honorable mention here?
So first guy I'll go with. See where you guys are at. I'll reach back a little bit. My number 14 back, to give a honorable mention, is Jaquavius Woody Marks from USC.
Okay.
He's one of those guys where if you were a little bigger, I think he'd be moving up a lot further. I have a 6th round grade on him. So like second half of day 3. Love his burst. And he actually he's one of the few backs in this class that has some good long speed.
Yeah.
Also has great contact balance. Very good receiver. My issue is he kind of projects as because of his size. He projects as more of a third down back in the NFL, but don't know if he has the pass protection to hold up as a third down back. But man, I mean, there's a lot of really good things out there that he can do. As long as you're not asking him to constantly pass protect, I think he can find a role to be productive in this league.
Interesting. Yeah. I didn't watch him in this cycle because again I think he was one of those guys that just didn't make the cut before I didn't have time to watch. I feel similarly about another player that I don't know if will be on any of our lists, but I assume not. But Rashard Smith out of SMU, the kind of receiver convert from Miami, comes over, becomes their lead back. Similar style where he's more of a receiver build, but he played a huge season for SMU. It was awesome for them as a runner, but also was super productive as a receiver. You can see the receiver skills. But again, I don't know what his role is ultimately at the NFL level because I don't think he can really carry the ball a ton with his build. And he also is obviously kind of new to the position. This isn't like a Tyrone Tracy thing where he's 200 plus pounds and something like that. It's not that way for him, unfortunately. Same thing with, I think, Marks, too, where it's like he would probably be used in an offense, but how much and what exactly will it be? So I see that.
Yeah, I feel the same way pretty much. I did watch a little bit less of him than some of the other backs, so I don't, I might not be quite up to date with him, but he was a very fun watch from what I did watch. But yeah, my biggest worry with him, kind of as you guys said, is just he's not a physical runner, and I think that I just worry about him being able to take NFL hits, over and over again throughout a season. And I think because of that, I just don't think his role in an offense can be as big. But he's nice, and he's nice catching out of the backfield as well.
Right.
He's very entertaining to watch.
Like it. I wanted to throw out another name here because I'm really curious where you guys are at on this. This is the one pre-show I mentioned that really made me sad to put him where I did, but I feel like that's just as high as I could go. I have him at 13, Cam Scatabo out of Arizona State. Huge senior season. Jake, I know Sacramento State transferred to Arizona State, so I know you're probably familiar with him before then. But just really good college player, and I think he will have a role in the NFL. But I just don't see the athletic traits required to be a full-time starter in the NFL to me. Good size, good vision overall, good contact balance, but just it feels like he's going to end up one of those players that gets drafted to a team and probably makes some plays occasionally, but never really takes hold of a starting role.
All right, I have him as my running back 5.
Okay, that's what I've wondered.
That was who I was alluding to before the show.
I thought so. Okay, because as soon as I figured,
I will say I have, I watched him at Sac State every game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so fair enough.
So I've watched much more of him than any other back in the class. And I did go to the same school, so I've just, I don't think that guy's too much, but if somebody was watching and knows I went to Sac State, that's probably what they would think about. The reason I have him so high is that he is somebody who just carves out a role for himself wherever he goes. He had no, he got one offer and it was from Sacramento State out of high
Yeah.
school. He wasn't the starter. They had a really good running back at the time, but he comes in, just busts his ass, and carves out a role. He did the same thing at Arizona State. I don't think he'll be drafted as high as I have him on my rankings at all. But and he won't have a big rookie season, but I just see him as a guy who's able to, he's going to go to a team, and in 2 or 3 years, he's going to end up carving out a role. I think he's a really well-rounded back. A lot of what we've seen has been, or specifically for me, against FCS opponents, and then at Arizona State as well. So I do understand like the reason to not be overly confident that what he's doing right now will translate to the NFL. I get that reasoning, but he's an extremely physical runner, and he has kind of underrated athleticism a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I just think he's a guy that in a few years after the draft cycle will be making potentially a bigger impact than some of the guys that most people will have ahead of him on their list. But yeah, I don't know. I've also watched him much more than the other backs on this list.
That I'm sure plays an element to it for sure. What do you think, Dalton? Do you have him in your honorable mentions, or you have somewhere else? Or?
I'm closer to you, Shayne. I have him as my RB16.
Okay.
For me, it's just like I love his running style. He runs angry.
Super fun.
I love that.
Awesome.
Also, great hands. Like
I wanted to get to that too.
He's like sneaky good as a receiver. He can make some plays.
He could climb up the board at the combine if he puts up a good like his 40 time.
If he tests well,
going to be very important. But I do worry that at the next level he projects more as a fullback than a running back. Like I think teams might ask him, say, "Hey, put on 10 pounds. We want you to play special teams and be kind of a hybrid running back, fullback guy." My comp for him, I don't know how you guys feel about this, is Toby Gerhart.
Oh,
like
Toby Gerhart vibe.
All right. Hey, I wonder why.
That's a name I haven't heard in quite a while.
No, yeah. No, for me, I think ultimately what I decided with him is that I think his role in the NFL should be as a third down back right away, because the pass protection, the toughness as a runner for short yardage on third downs, the ability as a receiver where if he does get open on his route, he's probably going to catch the ball and can make some stuff happen. That's where I think he can make money in the NFL early on. And then if he can show enough as a runner when given opportunities that, maybe the lack of overall athleticism, in my eyes at least, isn't a big deal, and he can make it work anyway, then maybe he could climb to being like an actual starting player, right? But I just, on tape, there's too often where I'm like, man, he's really not getting away from these guys. He's really not separate. And at the next level, unfortunately, it does beg the question, like, are you going to be able to consistently rack up yardage as a starting caliber back, or are you best suited in a smaller role? And I think right now, at least, and we'll kind of see where it goes from here, I think NFL teams are probably viewing him as more like that. Or even like you said, Dalton, maybe something like what you talked about. But still, super fun player. Certainly hope he gets drafted higher than I expect, and also does better than I expect. But it's just kind of where I'm at with him right now.
Yeah.
Any other honorable mentions you guys want to throw out there before we get to our top 10?
I have one that I'm curious if he's going to come up on anyone's list. I have Trevor Etienne as my running back 13. I don't know where you guys are at with that.
I chose not to watch him because I really hope he goes back to school, because I think he can.
It's tricky.
I want to see him. I want to see him hopefully with a healthy season. And George, like, that's my thing. I chose not to watch him for that reason. If he does come out, I will have to watch him obviously more and kind of revise that. But yeah, it's from what I've seen. I don't think I'd be that far off from you, Dalton.
Yeah. So I like the patience, quick, great vision. It's just, I think the issue is, again, similar to Marks, doesn't really have NFL size, and unlike Marks, doesn't really have the long speed.
Not as much, no.
Yeah. And because of that, I don't know if he can be a third down back, just because I don't know if he has the size to really hold up as a blocker. And that's going to be the tricky part for him. But, man, the vision and the patience, like the instincts are there. and he does have that quick burst where he is going to make some chunk plays.
Yeah, he can get on you in a hurry. Just he might not pull away, but he will get 20 yards down the field faster than a lot of guys will just not really pass that. So,
yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you guys with him. He was my running back 13.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll throw out. Oh, sorry, Jake. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You can.
So I want to throw out another name just because I have a comp for this player that I think is interesting and that I think you guys will remember probably because it wasn't that long ago, but it feels like it was at this point because I looked at it. I'm like, that's really only been like 4 years. Kyle Monangai out of Rutgers, number 14 for me. Smaller back, but well built, compact, tough runner, got good quickness. Kind of reminds me of James Robinson, if you remember, with the Jaguars before he died with his knee. Like, not like super like twitched up or anything like that, but really smart runner who's going to be able to get yards after contact, like built low to the ground, like that type of back to me is I think what Kyle Monangai can be, and I think he'd be a great like if you have a dude who like really has the burst and explosiveness, but just isn't super consistent. Throwing this guy out there with him and just letting him kind of get the tough yardage as a smaller back that can kind of get in between the tackles and push the pile. I think he could be a really good fit for a team as like a day 3 pick that just needs running back depth.
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same way.
Yeah, I don't hate that comp. I didn't watch him too much just because just looking at where he with the build and everything, I just feel like he fell into the category of a lot of guys where I didn't think there was he'll get on a roster. But it's just hard to predict.
The nice thing with him is he runs tough for his size, and I think him being a little bit shorter at that size does like he's built pretty well. So he's not this guy that like can't take contact. It's just that he doesn't have the athletic traits I think to be like a full-time starter, if that makes sense. Like that's just kind of where I think with him. And with Robinson, like he was able to avoid that, which is why the comp is a little bit off to me, maybe still. But I think that they have a similar like style of running. I think is kind of where it comes from for me. So he's definitely somebody to watch out for, I think, there too. Plus, Rutgers is like not bad, so good for them. It's been a while since they haven't been terrible. But Jake, did you have any other honorable mentions you want to throw
out? No, we've kind of gone through most of mine.
Okay, cool. So we'll jump into our top 10. There might be guys that are like outside of our top 10s that we bring up, and we can say that they were also an honorable mention technically too. So. But I don't think that other than Scatabo, I don't think we talked about anyone who's in someone else's top 10, right?
No, that was my only one.
So.
Okay, so we'll throw that. I'm going to throw that up there just so I know that we've talked about your number 5, Jake. But let's kick it off with number 10, and I'll start. This is a player that I didn't know what to do with fully, but I like a specific thing about their game enough where I think that it's garners them into the top 10. DJ Giddens, running back out of Kansas State, wicked quickness and like cutting ability, like really a good ability to shake guys in the open field. Just doesn't have a ton of long speed, and again, that's kind of going to be a common theme I think with this class for the most part. There's some guys up at the top and some guys sprinkled in that don't have that issue to me, but with Giddens, I think he's a really well-rounded back. I think he's the type of back that you draft like late 3rd, early 4th, and then he ends up being your starter for a couple of years. You don't really know if that was the case normally. Like you weren't sure if that was the plan necessarily, but it kind of happens that way. Kind of feels a little bit like doesn't have the same build, I don't think, as him, but just in terms of the role I think he'll play and the fact he'll end up being a starter, like a Brian Robinson Jr. for Washington, that type of level of back where it's not like you're not like super thrilled that he's your starting running back, but he'll have games you're like, oh, all right. Pretty good, and then other times he doesn't really do it. It's kind of this weird, inconsistent thing with them. But just love the cutting ability, the ability in open field. He can catch the ball well. There's a play against Tulane where he kind of sneaks down the sideline and catches it over shoulders. Really nice play. Like this really well-rounded back that I think would be able to be a really good contributor to a backfield.
Yeah, he looks really graceful.
Very smooth.
That was the first thing I noted when I watched him was he just looks like very natural. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's a great athlete. He shows really good instincts. The biggest thing that I worry about is I noticed a lot of times where once he gets up to a defender, I don't know if he like hesitates a bit or something, but he kind of does have a high pad level, and I think in the NFL
he's an upright runner, yeah,
because he doesn't look like he like super decisive like he wants to. and I'm not saying he has to start running people over, but he does look like almost like he gets caught off guard a little bit to me. And I think that caused him to have a high pad level, which that was my biggest concern. He's just outside my top 10, but
Yeah, he's taller, a more upright runner, which that kind of sometimes gets him in trouble.
Yeah, I'm in a very similar spot to you guys on him. He's my number 11 running back, so
Okay, yeah.
right outside the top 10. And yet, I don't know, they're just the prerequisites are there. There's just not a lot to get excited about with him.
Yeah, again, he's well-rounded, but I don't think he doesn't have anything special. The cutting ability occasionally gets me off my chair a little bit, but outside of that, there's really nothing that stands out super with him. That's kind of the biggest thing.
And for me, you mentioned the one catch, but for me, I didn't see a ton of like
They didn't use him that way
like
much.
he's going to be much of a factor on third down. Like I just don't know if he's going to be a guy you want out there on third down in terms of what he does in the passing game. And as a pass protector, didn't see a lot of good stuff.
Not a lot of great stuff. Yeah, he's like Jake said, he's kind of more upright, so sometimes it's easy to get under his pads and push him back if he's in pass protection, which is tough, obviously.
Yeah, so he could be the first down guy in a committee, though. I could see
that's kind of my view with him. Is I think you give him like if you want to run a 2 or 3 back kind of committee, he could be one of the guys that takes a lot of the carries on early downs just because of the quickness. Occasionally he could break something off with it, get a big play, but he's more just going to kind of consistently churn out yards, I think. Yeah. Let's go to Jake. Who do you have as number 10 for you?
My running back 10 is Katron Allen.
Ooh. Okay. All right. Interesting.
Mainly, one of the things that really jumped out to me with him is he feels like somebody who just fires through the line of scrimmage quicker than almost any running back I've seen in this class. With that, his top end speed isn't great, but he is able to. He's just a one cut straight downhill runner. And I think that alone can give him kind of a role in the NFL. I do think he's one of those guys that is going to be very scheme specific in the league. Just his overall athletic profile really limits him a bit. His speed is average. He doesn't really take big strides at all. But it's like he has no wasted movement. He's at his best when he can just get the ball. And I'm sure you guys are both more knowledgeable about him than me as Penn State fans, but that just jumped out to me enough to get him in the top 10. His lack of overall athleticism has him lower for me, but yeah, I'm curious to see how you guys feel about him.
Yeah. I did not watch him personally just because
we know
one, I'd like to see him come out. I think that's the biggest reason. And also I've watched him a ton.
Yeah,
during the year, that's a big thing. But yeah, I mean, for me, very raw in terms of kind of the other facets to his game. That's why I'd really like to see him. And also, like, it is hard to watch him when you watch him next to Nick Singleton, whom, spoiler alert, very high on. And I think that's kind of the tricky part with him. And I'd like to see him take a year where he is getting the bulk of the carries and he is the focal point of the running game. Because right now I think he is like the change of pace guy from Singleton. You know, they have the whole thunder and lightning thing going with him and Singleton. And yeah, it's hard to see where he projects in the NFL. I think he'll definitely, if he comes out this year, I think he'll be a day 3 guy and be productive. Like, for sure. I'm just curious to see what he could be.
Yeah, I think, he's not on my list because, one, I do think he should come back. And two, because I know him well enough to know that, like, for me at this point, I don't think there's enough there for him to want to come out in a class as deep as this, where I think next year there's potential for him to do better. And he probably, if he were to return, he obviously is going to be the lead running back. Like, they have guys on that roster that I think they'll get involved. Like, Quentin Martin Jr.'s got a little bit of run this year as a freshman, but I think he'll obviously get more next year. They have other guys, that are around that'll also play well with him, but I think he would be the unquestioned, obviously, leader of that group if he were to come back. And there's just not enough traits for me to, like, take him off of what he's shown in college early. Obviously, he'd be a day 3 pick, and he might be regardless, but I think he needs to show a little bit more. Just in general, different things you can do with him as a third down back, especially. Like, he had a good receiving year. I think it was last year, Dalton, if I'm not mistaken, but this year it's been more Singleton. So, like, you kind of want to see him maybe do more as receiver. He just doesn't have, again, like the high-end traits that you bet on if you're going to take a guy that, is a little bit raw still, like you said, too.
Yeah. It's weird with him, too. You mentioned the receiving stuff because it just happened the other day. I feel like there's a lot of times where he is open in the receiving game,
Yeah.
and Howard passes him up.
He kind of does for whatever reason. They also they're not trying to get him the football in that way either, the way they do with Singleton. Like, they're trying to get Singleton involved as receiver. There's a reason for that. He's more explosive, all that stuff. But it's still just like, I don't know if there's untapped potential there, potentially. And that obviously can change his profile a little bit. So we'll see. But yeah, he's a guy that's tough to gauge.
Yeah, it's hard to see what he does in space because he's never allowed to do it.
No, he's really he never really is in space. So it's like, what are you gonna do? But
that's going to be the theme generally with every Penn State player we talk about is the offensive scheme, especially the offensive scheme really limits like what you're going to be able to assess out of these guys.
That is fair. So there's that. But yeah, so who's your number 10 then, Dalton?
So my number 10 is Jordan James from Oregon.
Ooh, I see. I chose to not watch him because he's another guy that I would like to see come back, personally. But because I know he can. But so there's certain guys that I did choose because I'm kind of guessing on who, because we're a little bit early before we get all the declarations. But I'm guessing on who might return, and he was one of the guys I chose to throw in that group.
Yeah, he's interesting because I could see him taking off in next year's class because he is. Tape's fun. He hits the ball hard.
Yes.
Great vision, lowers his shoulder well between the tackles. Built kind of like a bowling ball at 5'10", 210, and finishes those runs. The only issue is after about 10, 15 yards, he's not going to pull away from anybody. And he's not going to make a lot of people miss, so you're not going to have the explosive plays. But, man, he is going to plow ahead and get you what's blocked in a little bit more every time.
Yeah. Fun player. Yeah, just didn't watch him for this exercise. But did you watch him, Jake, for this?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as Shayne. I would like to see him come back, but I do think he has the potential next year to definitely be pretty high on my list for sure.
Yeah. We'll see what he kind of looks like, but yeah, definitely good call. Because if he does come out, he is probably going to be somewhere in that range for me too, if I had to guess, just from what I've seen of him.
My grade was 5th round, which I can see.
Yeah. I could see him sneaking up into like late day 2, early day 3 if he sticks around and does another season like this.
I agree.
Yeah, so we'll see what kind of I think that kind of depends on what the NFL tells him when he's looking to come out. Like, do they view him as it like early day 3 guy, or is it like maybe day 3 and like, okay, maybe I stick around for there, maybe get some money because you can do that now. Good for them. We'll see.
Playoff games are going to matter for a lot of. I think a lot of these guys. Playoff games are going to matter a lot because this is the first chance for them to put on tape against like defenses that have a lot of NFL guys on them. Because otherwise, I mean, who's the only teams he's played that have a bunch of NFL prospects on their defense this year are Penn State and Ohio State. That's it.
Yeah. So we'll see. Now he's going to go play Ohio State again, right? Is that who he's going to play next? Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. Should be fun though. Let's move on to number 9. So I have this is another guy pre-show that we talked about a little bit. I have R.J. Harvey from UCF at number 9. It's tough with him because like been through a lot, an older prospect because of that. I believe started in 2019 is whenever he came into college. Was a third-string quarterback, I believe, was what it was initially, and then moved to UCF. Became running back, had some season-ending injuries, missed time, yada, yada, yada. And last year's has absolutely blown the hell up. And it's been really awesome to watch. Super fun player, smaller, more compact player, about 5'8", 190 something is my guess from the estimates I saw. Explosive in short areas, really tough runner for his size. Reminds me a lot of a current NFL player that went pretty late, as I expect him to go too, because of a combination of size and other things. Bucky Irving for the Buccaneers. I liked him despite the like athletic traits and stuff like that it seemed like testing wise he had, but just showed up on film. Similar thing with Harvey. I do not know what he's going to look like in testing. I don't know any of that stuff, but dude can run the football. That's all I really know. And he has shown, honestly, probably a little bit more burst in the college level than I saw from Irving at times too. So, an interesting player for sure. But I feel like I had to put him in my top 10 solely because of a combination of one, the story with him, and two, just so
Yeah.
much fun to watch.
Yeah, he was outside of my top 10, but he was very fun to watch. He has a running style that gets him a decent amount of yards after contact,
Yep.
but in the same way, I also feel like there are times where he'll just kind of hop out of bounds instead of like if he's on the sideline and there's a defender closing in on him. There's a few times I've seen him just kind of hop out of bounds, even though he's pretty good at getting yards after contact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of separating him from my top 10. Like, I have a 6th-round grade on him, and he's my RB12. So,
Right.
very
Yeah.
close there. It's funny, like, the film is, like you said, the film's great.
So
My only concerns that I've written on my notes for him are old AF and undersized. That's literally what I wrote.
yeah,
I was
that's
like,
what it is, and
so
that's ultimately what it comes down to, right?
like
Yeah,
to put in perspective, he is going to be, I think, 20. I tried to find his exact age, and it is just hidden. It is not mentioned anywhere online. Like, it's really weird. Like, you can't find his actual age really anywhere.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna guess he's gonna be like 24 by the time he starts his first NFL season, 23, 24, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like a lot of the guys in this class are gonna be like signing their second contract at that age.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing with him.
Yeah. It's just tough. It is. Like, that's the element of the kind of surprise almost, at least for some of us, of like, one, how old is he really? Like, he's dealt with a lot. Now, granted, you look at the production, it's damn good.
Yeah.
Dude's averaged 6.6 yards per carry in his career, and like not on a small amount of attempts. Like, it's been pretty impressive production at UCF, and he looks the part in a lot of cases on film. It's just, again, like you said, I don't know how much of that's going to translate. I don't know if he'll be able to replicate all of those things. And also, is he 24? Is he damn near 25? I don't know. It beats me. But granted, like, running backs have kind of short shelf lives anyway. Maybe if you get a nice 4-year stretch of him as like one of the two lead backs in your offense, you're okay with that. But it's like, how early do you draft him? Like you said, Dalton. I have him also as like a 5th round guy because I think that he's good enough to where even if there's red flags on his profile, you have to give him a shot. So it's like,
you'd be like, yeah, how are you going to re-sign? Like, the problem is, like, you almost assume that you're not going to re-sign him because
pretty much, kind of, yeah.
In their 30.
It's like I don't know.
Like,
it's
you
tough.
don't want to do that. Like, we talk about not wanting to do that for some of the quarterbacks, like in last year's class, especially. Like, we were talking about the quarterbacks. That running backs way different.
Yeah, if Kirk Cousins hadn't been asked, Matthew Penix might have been 27 when he started his first game or something. You know what I mean? So it's like that type of stuff. But
I think you can play into your late 30s.
Yes, right. So it is tough for him. But I had to throw him on at 9. I just felt like he was too good a player.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
So, but
the potential is there for him to be very good.
Yes, absolutely. So who do you have at 9, Jake?
I have Devin Neal.
Ooh, okay.
And this is one of those things, I'll probably say this a few times for the rest of the episode, but it's in a less stacked class, he'd be higher than 9 because I like a lot of things that he does. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like a James Cook type of player.
Oh, okay.
That was just something that I thought of when I was watching him. I think he can be a very solid dual threat back on an offense. I think he's best fit for a zone offense, but he's one of those players that I feel like he's not going to be scheme specific. I think he can produce in a majority of offenses that he's put in, and have a decent sized role in the passing game because he made some plays catching the ball at Kansas, but his route tree was pretty for the most part limited. They didn't really have him do
Yeah, they
too
didn't
much.
ask him to do it
But
too much.
I think the potential is there for him to have a bigger role there too. Um, I think he's a solid starting running back in the NFL to me. I think he can be um, pretty versatile as a running back, and again, pretty solid as a pass catcher as well. So he's my running back 9, but it's a stacked class. But I think he'll be a good running back in the NFL.
Where do you
Yeah.
have him, Dalton?
He is my running back 9 as well. So it works
Okay.
out.
So that's cool. So
Yeah.
real quick, so we remember where we're at. He's my RB7, so I'll talk about
Okay.
him too. But he's
We're all
RB7.
kind of similar.
Similar, yeah.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Dalton.
Yeah, the vision is excellent. Love that low center of gravity. Very shifty in the open field. And he loves contact. Keeps his feet through it, which I love. My only concern with him, and this is where I think he's a guy that, again, Combine could really push him.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'm worried that both the long speed, and the quickness just aren't quite at that NFL level. Like, he's a guy, I think there's a lot of guys in this class like this that look fantastic on film in college, that all of a sudden when that NFL speed creeps up, a lot of what they do is just not going to look as good. And that's the tricky part, because I do think running back is one of those positions where it really is a numbers game with certain things.
Yeah.
And that's going to be where I'm really curious to see what those measurables look like.
I'm curious too. Now, the one thing I'll give him, and it's one of the reasons why he's a little bit, I think, maybe higher for me than you guys, is that when he's in the open field or when he has one defender in front of him, he has this cut that he will do that leaves dudes in the dust. Like, they cannot cut with him and turn with him on that. It's a one cut thing, so he's not breaking a guy down the middle of the field and then getting around them, but it's just like one quick up the field motion where he kind of gives you a little bit of a hesitation on the outside and then just immediately bursts forward. And I saw it on tape multiple times with him where the dude had no shot. Like, it was over. Like, that defender was not getting into play at that point. That's kind of what I'm hoping will translate to the next level, where he has that in his bag, at least in the open field. Because you're right. I don't think he has he has fine speed. I don't think it's anything special, obviously. I think that he's a powerful, compact runner for his size. He will break tackles because of his power. But he doesn't have the athletic traits to be like this great space player, I don't think, despite him being pretty good at that in college. But that one cut, I think it could be enough of a move for him to, like, at least give him something he can do to create yardage that might not always be there. So that's kind of where I'm hanging my hat on with him a little bit. Yeah. So, but again, feel pretty similarly about him, I think, too. So that was all of our number 9s. We got that taken care of. That's my number 7. So let's move on to number 8. I have Dylan Sampson at 8 from Tennessee. I thought I'd be higher on him than I was. And it's not that I don't like him, but he's also one of those guys where I'm like, maybe he also could go back to Tennessee potentially. But I don't know if he really has to. But I think he's a really well-rounded player to me. But I don't know if any of it is like enough to push him higher up on this list, basically, is kind of what it comes down to. Like, good contact balance, good vision as a runner. He'll break arm tackles consistently and fall forward. He has a little bit more speed than some of the guys we talked about, but I still don't think it's anything great, at least not that I saw. Isn't, again, just really not special at anything, but won't be a liability to anything either. Like, I don't think he's going to be a guy that you worry about putting out there in really any situation in particular, but might not be the best back on your team, depending on what team we're looking at. So,
yeah, I had him at 7, so pretty similar. I think one thing I noticed was with him, he didn't seem to see a lot of like heavy boxes.
And in Tennessee, you're not gonna. The way that they spread the offense, that you're not going to see many of it, and that's a factor here, for sure. But it's not really his fault. It's not really anything fair to do with him. But
that's not his fault. I am curious to see how he looks against that at the NFL level. That's one just not necessarily a concern, but just kind of like a question.
You just don't really know. It's kind of the same thing with I can't think of his name right now, the running back for the Dolphins that they drafted from Tennessee last year. Yeah, from Tennessee last year.
No.
I swear I forget these guys after a year.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
And I have to go look, but it gets similar. Like, you don't know because it's Tennessee's offense. They're always spread out. So it's like, But
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel this pretty much the same way as you. Aside from that, he does a lot of things really well, but there's not one thing that really jumps off the page with me, and for that he's 7. But yeah, stacked class. I'm pretty
Yeah.
good player.
Yeah, like Jake, he's also my number 7 guy.
All right.
And he's my last guy that I have a day 2 grade on. And for me, like you guys mentioned it, yeah, the long speed is kind of, he's not going to pull away from guys.
No.
But what I do love is that burst. He gets to the hole
initial
in a
quickness.
hurry. He gets up top speed very quick. But you see that a lot on tape at Tennessee because he gets to the second level all the time at Tennessee because there's no stacked boxes.
Yeah, he gets a runway a lot of the time.
Yeah, what's he gonna look like? Seeing 7, 8-man boxes? I don't know. That's the tricky part because he's just the strength. I'm just not sure what it's gonna look like in the NFL. And you mentioned like not a lot of concerns. The one I do have is pass protection. I just don't know how much of that he's going to be able to do in the NFL.
Yeah.
But man, his burst is awesome. And that, like, there's going to be a use for that, even if it's as just in the return game and a couple carries a game. Like, he is going to make some plays in the NFL.
Agreed, for sure. Yeah. Let's move on then to Dalton. Who's your number 8 guy?
So my number 8 guy is Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State.
Okay. All right.
So I don't know. You guys might be a little higher on him than me.
Slightly. Not crazy. Nothing crazy. At least me. I don't know.
I mean, I do love like he's a big back. Consistently beats defenders to the edge. He is a true 3 down back in that he can be used in like a lot of different situations. My issue is he just doesn't create much between the tackles. Doesn't make a lot of people miss. Lacks that breakaway speed. Like between the tackles, he's just gonna kind of get what's blocked and fall forward once he makes contact. And on the edge, he does do well in the stretch runs a little bit. He does win the edge, but after that, he's just not gonna pull away from people. He's kind of almost like a skinnier A.J. Dillon is almost the way to put it.
Okay. I had a comp for him. Real quick, just to throw it out there. I have him number 6. Still pretty close. James Conner in a lot of ways. I think very smart runners, not high-end athletes, but they were smart runners. I think Gordon could have a similar level of success that we've seen Conner have. Yeah. In Arizona, not as much as receiver. I think Connor has better receiving chops than him overall. But like in general, I think that style of runner where like he's never going to wow you with his overall athleticism. He's not going to pull away from you as a runner, but he will get everything blocked for him and then a little bit more because of his power and his size. So
big, really like one of the few big backs in this class.
Derrick Henry light in terms of size.
Yes,
kind of like that bigger, taller back, but also like not. He's not like he has enough quickness still and burst to actually still play at that size. But
yeah, I did not have him in my top 10.
We have a hater alert, folks. Hater alert.
I guess so, and I know that's like a
lot of people say we're hating for having him 6 and 8. So you're not really. It's not even that bad. So it's, it could be worse.
Draft database has him at 5.
So, closer to that top 5 range.
Okay. But Shayne, you kind of touched on it a bit, saying that he'll get everything that's blocked for him. And that's why he's not in my top 10, just because when he doesn't have anywhere to go, I don't see a lot of creativity with him. And he also he's not really explosive enough to get like around the outside or outrun defensive angles or stuff like that. So I think that the combination of those two things has me just a little bit lower on him. There are a lot of things he does well, though. He's a very powerful back, and I think he can have a role in the NFL. But I think he's not a guy that can. I don't have confidence in him making something happen when it's not there. The same way that I do with some other backs that are higher on that
Fair
list.
enough. Yeah, I do get that element of it. In that case, who do you have at number 8, Jake?
So my number 8 is Caleb Johnson.
Ooh, okay.
So I think my running back list is a bit
I
different than
think
some of the other
we'll
ones.
see kind of where consensus ultimately lands, but I think I also might be slightly lower in Johnson, not as low as you, but I have him at 5.
Yeah.
That's where I have him.
So
Okay.
we have him too. So we're similar. I really love Caleb Johnson. I'll let you obviously get into it first, Jake, because you mentioned him first. But I have my reasons for why he's a little bit lower. But go ahead.
Yeah, and Johnson also he does. This almost sounds a little hypocritical because I just kind of talked about Gordon not being as great when it's not there, and Johnson does have that same issue. So that is one thing that has me a little bit lower on him, but I think he's a bit more decisive in those moments, and he really one thing that I notice about him is he just wants to get up the field. So that kind of quells that a little bit for me. He's good in pass protection, and I think he has some decent upside as a pass catcher, but he really does not have any type of second gear that's going to break away from NFL defenses. And as I mentioned, he does. If he gets the handoff and there's already somebody in the backfield, I don't feel very confident that he's gonna
Yeah.
make something happen there, which is something that I just talked about with Gordon. So I
Yeah.
think with Johnson though, there's just a little bit more upside aside from that for me. But yeah, I think that's enough of a concern for me to be a little bit lower on him.
So initially, I agree with like what you said. If someone meets him in the backfield, I don't know if he's going to get away. But if he does get to the second level, I do think what the reason why I do have a fifth, he's my RB5 is because I do think, unlike a lot of guys in this class, I do think he can pull away once he gets ahead of steam, which I do think
Hmm.
is something that a lot of these guys don't have. It just takes him a while to accelerate. That's the big concern with him.
Yeah, the thing I noted, the number one thing I noted with him is contact balance. He's so well built that's really hard to affect him with anything other than a solid hit and a solid tackle, which helps him because again, like once he does get in the open field, I do agree with you, Dalton, that he does have a gear he can eventually get to that's a little bit higher than some of the other guys we talked about. But it just does take him a bit. So on the way to there, the only way for him to create yardage is to be able to bounce off of those tackles with his contact balance. So I think he does a good job of that. I do. The reason I have him at 5, opposed to where a lot of people might have him higher than that, with the production and everything else, is just again I don't know how creative of a runner he's capable of being at the next
Yeah.
level. And if he goes to a team that can block the hell out of the defense, then he's probably going to be very productive because he'll also break some tackles. He's very powerful when he gets going. He will run people over, all that good stuff. But he's going to need some room to really be effective, and almost every running back does. But when we're getting up into the top 5 of this class, which is a really good class, some of these guys don't have as much worries about their offensive line just to be able to be productive. So that's ultimately where I think he falls for me for that reason.
Yeah, extremely scheme dependent. Like, if you run a zone scheme, he's probably not on your board. If
Probably
you
not
run
a
a
great fit.
power scheme, you
Yeah.
might take him in the second round.
Yeah, I think that's the sweet spot is like who drafts him and who wants that type of runner, right? If you get the right fit, I think that could be he could really have a great rookie season, really career with the right team, the right fit.
Yeah.
So yeah, as a true starter too. So that takes care of all of our number 8s, and all of our number 7s already taken care of as well. I'm keeping track of that. And then my number 6 was Ollie Gordon. So Jake, who's your number 6 guy?
My number 6 is Nick
Okay,
Oh,
Singletary.
wow.
Um, and again, I really am very high on him.
Mhm.
I'm just very high on, as we all are, a lot of guys in
Gotcha.
this class. I think as a pass catcher, he'll have a pretty big role in the NFL. He's got great vision. He doesn't waste any movement. It's like the opposite of an Isaiah Pacheco or something. But he's got great footwork. Really, my biggest concerns are just his agility in the open field. And I think, although he does have really good vision, I think he can be a little bit too patient at times. And I think that's going to be a bit of a learning curve in the NFL because that hole is just going to close quicker. But again, those are all things that I think um, can be improved. So I do think he'll be a very, very solid player in the NFL.
Where do you have him, Dalton?
So he's my RB3.
Okay.
So I'm pretty high on him, mostly because I do think I love the home run ability. I think he has more home run ability than most of the guys in this class. Um, once he hits the gas, he's a problem because not only does he have that really high second gear, he has the strength to keep people off of him. And that's the thing. He's a legit high end NFL back in that way. I think at least the potential. But yeah, the agility is a little bit of an issue. Um, and it's the ability to get to that second gear. It takes him a minute to really step on the gas, and sometimes by the time he's getting that foot down to really get upfield, the hole is already starting to collapse because it just takes and that extra half second to really get his foot in the ground and go. But man, once he gets going, yeah, he's an issue, and I think that's going to translate to the NFL. If he goes to a good team that can get stuff blocked, he is going to be a big time player in this league, I think.
So you're gonna hate me, Dalton. He is number 11 on my board.
Oh wow!
For running backs, and the main reason why is, as someone who's watched, especially this past year, every game he's played this year, and has watched other games he's played in the past too. He's just inconsistent, man. There's a lot of inconsistency with his vision. There's a lot of inconsistency, I think, with his power as a runner, despite his size. The speed is awesome. The burst when it shows up is great. But again, it kind of feels like there's a lot of times where he just doesn't get to access it because of the fact he isn't this quick starter, really. And you brought that up. And it makes me worry that he's going to be one of those really true boom or bust runners where at the NFL level, because he doesn't start particularly fast, are a lot of his carries going to be 2 yards, a yard, maybe a couple 3 or 4 yarders sometimes. And then maybe you get a 30, 40, 51. But a lot of the game, you're struggling to churn out yards consistently with him as a lead back. And does that ultimately make him a true change of pace at the next level, right? Is that where he ends up because of that? That's what I worry a little bit with him. So
I get that, and
yeah.
I chalk a lot of that up to the scheme. I feel Penn State runs an offense designed for Bo Prabula and Katron Allen,
and don't play them.
Then they recruit Drew Aller and Nick Singleton.
Yeah, and they don't play them as much as they should, or at least with Prabula especially. Yeah.
Well, and they don't run the offense. They don't just run they have elite recruits and then don't run a pro style offense for whatever reason.
It is funny. Yeah, it is kind of funny the way. Yeah, fair. I agree with that. He's one of those guys. I think if you have him at 3, I'm look at what happens when he actually gets going. And if you have him at 11 like me, it's but when it doesn't happen, what does he do? The pass catching, I think, is really helpful too, because I think that does make him a legitimate 3-down potential player, right? And when you have that in any running back that's getting drafted in the top probably 60 picks or so is I think his ceiling, that you could make that happen. You can justify doing that. But it just, for me, I'd probably want to err on the side of caution, and if he's going to be picked that high, I'm probably letting someone else pick him. That's kind of where I'm at with it. So, but super fun when it works though. So can't really argue that. So that was everybody's top. You actually have to say your 6, Dalton, still.
So my 6 is Quinshon Judkins.
Okay.
So I think he's probably going to be higher in a lot of people's boards. I do love his first step. He lowers his shoulder with bad intentions. Good route runner, scheme versatile. The issue for me is, not much wiggle, and he's also not very dynamic as a playmaker. Not going to create a ton of explosive plays. And also, I don't know if he wasn't asked to do a lot of it, but I just don't know how much of a pass protector he's going to be. And he's harder to project as a 3-down back, and that's my concern.
Yes, because he had some inconsistency with that at Ole Miss before he became a committee back with Travion Henderson, who I'm sure we'll also talk about. But it comes down to I think with him, and I have number 4, by the way, Dalton. So I'm not that far off with him. I have him just above Caleb Johnson because I think he has more explosiveness and more burst overall, especially like in that short area burst. But the long speed is kind of, I think, too, with him, which again, a lot of guys in this class like that. Doesn't have to be anything necessarily that bad because he has enough other skills to kind of make up for that. But yeah, you don't know for sure. Like I think he's going to be a good pass catcher in the NFL, but it's been kind of inconsistent. The pass protection is questionable a little bit. The overall, like he's so fun to watch in the open field is like especially with his stiff arm, like devastating stiff arm. That's going to be something that translates. I think we're going to have some fun highlights from him in that regard. But just again, a little bit off the mark in terms of like the overall package compared to the guys I have in the 3 spots ahead of him. So
yeah, I get that. He's my top committee back
right,
for what it's worth.
gotcha. Where you at, Matt Jake?
I have him at
so
3.
similar. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I like a lot of the things he does. I think in terms of his receiving game, I really don't think he got enough targets to really like
Yeah, I mean,
maximize his
neither
potential there.
one of them really did because they're playing together. It's kind of tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, it's just it,
Yeah,
it
that's tough.
happens. But I do think he can evolve even more at that in the NFL. Um, only I really have few concerns with him. I think he can be a little bit too patient at
Yeah.
times, and honestly don't even really know how to describe this. But there are sometimes watching him where he hits a hole and he like overcommits on it and then goes like if he's cutting like to the right or something, say he'll cut through a hole and then go like away from the space after the hole into defenders.
Mhm.
And I don't necessarily know exactly how to describe that, but it was something that I saw a lot. But other than that, I really don't have many concerns with him. I think he has a pretty well-rounded skill set to be a lead back in the NFL. And I think being this high on our list in such a stacked class kind of goes to show
Yeah.
just how much potential he has. Um, but yeah, I'm pretty high on
Yeah,
him.
should be a very fun player to watch. I think, but like I said, in the open field when he gets his hand on somebody and toss him to the ground, it is fun. I cannot do, like I know that's not full on analysis, but like, hey, sometimes you gotta let fun win, and
It's good
that
enough for
dude
me.
he can bury some people and with his stiff arm, which is always fun. And then so that takes care of all of our number 6, number 5. Also, we took care of. We all have our number 5s thrown out there, and then again, number 4 for me was Quinshon Judkins, so that's my number 4. Jake, who's your number 4?
My number 4 was
Okay,
Travion Henderson,
I figured.
another
Yeah,
Ohio
I
State.
figured.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting because I was high on 2 Penn State backs and 2 Ohio
Hey,
State backs. I thought that
it's a
was
good year for it.
interesting. He's a fun watch. He's a really fun watch. He is fast. Um, very, very fast. And I think that alone will give him a decent role in the NFL. He has the ability to even go out. I saw him at Ohio State go and line up as a receiver a few times after being motioned out there, and he can contribute that way as well. There's just a lot of things he does well. I don't really have many complaints with him. I think he's a player that can score from anywhere on the field. Um, he's so fast that he breaks a lot of tackles from what I saw, but it's not even necessarily with like power or anything. Like people just like he's too fast to arm tackle.
Slippery. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but yeah, I had him at 4.
Where'd you have Matt Dalton?
I also had him at 4. Yeah.
Okay, I figured. Yeah.
Yeah. So my big thing with him, same with Singleton, is the home run ability. I think in a class where you have a lot of guys that are averaging 6 yards a carry in college, the thing that separates a guy like him is that ability to really, when he gets into the open field, to put it away. I think that's the big thing with him. Now it takes him a minute to get up to that speed again, not super quick. In that as far as like short area quickness goes, and the size, like a lot of the measurables are just okay. But man, he has some great home run ability, has good wiggle in the open field too, which is really nice. So even though he might not like have a super quick jump cut like a lot of these guys, he's shifty enough in the open field to make people miss. And then once he does that, yeah, he is gone. And he has a really high football IQ too. Like one of the things that I love about him is blitz pickup is great, and
Pass protection is day one ready, 100%.
yeah, and also when the play breaks down, he is phenomenal in the scramble drill.
He will find open space.
So good, such a great safety blanket, and I think that is something that like you see that in the NFL constantly. Like the running backs that know how to like make themselves available have a lot of success in this league. And I think that's going to be a big thing for him is just the way he's going to find a use and he's going to stick around in this league, I think, as a starting running back for a long time, just because of how good of a football player he is.
That's, I think, what separated him from me because I have him as number 3. So just throwing that, you guys probably figured. But the thing that separated him from Judkins and Johnson and some of these other guys is one, the speed, the ability to, if there's a lane and he can get up to speed, he will be gone. Like there's not many guys that are going to catch him in the open field, even at the NFL level, once he gets past the line of scrimmage and in the secondary. Second thing with me, and this is kind of what I was missing with Singleton, and I think what kind of separates those two also in a lot of ways, is I think when the lane isn't there, he is so good at getting north and south and still getting effective yardage. He does not lose yards. He does not have a lot of negative plays on his film because he's always looking for space to try to at least get what he can get. So he's good at that too. He's not just this home run hitter threat. Like he's not a guy that's going to be a negative for most of the game and then maybe pops a 50-yarder. Like he will be an effective down to down back. And then the pass protection is a huge plus, like especially coming in the league now where like, yes, the running game is coming back a little bit, but you have to be able to protect the quarterback. You cannot allow a guy to come free and destroy your quarterback in the middle of the pocket. Like just not an option, right? You can't be doing that. He won't be doing that. Like that's just not going to be a problem for him. Just full on, like he could be a true like 3-down back pretty quickly, if not right away. And I think that he's one of the few guys we've talked about that I feel very confident about that, right? That's why he ends up number 3 for me. Any other thoughts on Henderson here? We have 2 guys left, and I assume I know the order of these 2 players. I think we're going to be in line with these 2 players. But I'm going to let Dalton kick this one off at number 2. Who do you have as your number 2 running back?
So shocker, it's Marion Hampton.
Yeah.
He's the best out of that day 2 group for me. Yep. Just because and now I have him, like I have the same grade for him and Singleton, full disclosure. I just think that for me, he accelerates super well through the hole and that contact balance is so good. And he's so well-rounded, willing pass protector, reliable receiver, hard to bring down when he gets the edge. Well-blocked run plays are always going to be chunks. Like, he's just very sound player. The only thing that I think is a concern is that he doesn't create a ton for himself. And I'd be very curious to see if, like, guys like Singleton and Henderson, if you put them in North Carolina's offense, put them in the ACC, and Hampton on a Big Ten team, what it would look like. But, man, I mean, they're not. And you got to watch the tape that's there, and the tape says that Marion Hampton is really, really good. Like, that's just what it is.
So I want to this is the easiest, like I've been doing some, like not anything super extensive because I'm trying to make sure I have time to watch these guys and like take like viable notes, but I've been taking notes on everybody I've watched. His is by far the shortest on my running back group, and it's literally, okay, let me pull it up. It's absolute freak, big, fast, strong, Nick Chubb comp, boom, I'm done. That's how I view him, is like Chubb, admittedly, I think had a little bit more creativity than what Hampton has shown.
Yeah.
But when that dude is, and I know this because I obviously have had to deal with him up until really recently with the injuries and stuff, but I've dealt with this guy. When there is a lane, you either get out of the way or get destroyed. Like it's over for you. Like when he has a lane and you're in front of him, you're gonna lose that. I'm sorry. Like he's a freak. He's 220 plus pounds, ton of power, ton of speed. Like you said, the burst is not fair for someone of this size. It's just not supposed to look like that. And yeah, the creativity is questionable. I do think Dalton. That's kind of why I don't view him as like a surefire, like even like late first round running back. Although I think he could get there for the right team. But I think it's because he just doesn't have to do it. Because like when you're this big and this fast at the ACC level, dudes just get out of your way by default, either because you run them over or because they're like, I can't catch this guy. I'm not even going to be there. Like it's just he doesn't really have to do a lot of creative things. I think. And I think he has the skill set to be able to do that more. But if you don't have to, why not? Why not just run through a dude's face? It's fun, I'm sure, for him. So, like, that's kind of where I'm at with him. But I do have him number 2 comfortably over Henderson just because I think the upside is spectacular. Like, this is a guy in the right offense, in the right situation that could challenge for, like, the 1,700, 1,800 yard type of years if he gets the right situation, I think. Like, just because of the physical traits, so.
Yeah, one of my only concerns was that lack of like a wiggle or creativity, but I kind of thought the same thing, Shayne, where like he's such a violent runner.
He's just like, I don't care. I'll create a hole.
I don't know. He doesn't think to juke. He just says, "I am."
Yeah, he's just you're walking like it's insane. It's disgusting, but yeah.
Yeah, the only other thing that I would complain about really, and it's not even a huge complaint, would just be his change of pace. I think he could be better in terms of changing his speeds a little bit. Once he gets through the line of scrimmage and then like nearing the second level, like to the safeties, I think he could be a little better change of pace there. But even that is a little bit
hard to stop the train when it gets rolling.
Yeah, he's a very good running back. I mean, I think he's like a surefire Pro Bowler. He's a very good back. He does everything well, and he plays football like he loves to run people over, which is great from a running back. In a class without our, I guess, everyone's unanimous running back 1, I think, he would be running back 1 if he wasn't in the same class as him.
Yeah, most years this is an RB1 player.
Really good.
But by the way, as far as consensus, like you're right, unanimous. Like, but there's gonna be some dude out there that's like, I don't care for him. There's some guys like, you know what, Ashton Genty sucks. Someone's gonna say it out there. Someone already has, I'm sure. If we look through, but they would be incorrect.
I mean, I think the take would just be that the Mountain West sucks. That would be
right. It's like great.
That's the only take.
It's like great. He dribbled dudes in the middle of the field. I don't care. I don't really care. It could have been playing in the SWAC or whatever it is. We're not doing this. It's whatever.
Still great against Oregon.
Right? Yeah. Oregon had plenty of trouble with them, but trust me, they got spooked. They got legitimately scared by that man. I think they were like, oh no. I feel like you could feel it on the side. And they're like, oh no, this might not be good.
You might single-handedly beat Penn State.
Yeah, right. Which I'm a little bit concerned about that. As much as I picked the upset in our betting show just for the fun of it, SMU just didn't deserve to be on the field with them. It felt like for a lot of that game. Tough for SMU.
They were good for like the first. They had a few good moments in the first quarter.
And then Kevin Jennings decided that the game was over.
Yeah, it went downhill with that 4th and 2.
Yeah, where he could have ran it.
As soon as that happened, I thought, this is not their day.
That was every Penn State game against the middle of the Big Ten. Their offense doesn't get going for the first quarter or so, but their defense is so suffocating that they just carry the team until eventually, the talent discrepancy on the other side of the ball breaks teams and the offense finally gets rolling. But the defense is just so suffocating that if you don't have a legit quarterback, you're screwed.
Yeah, and Jennings has been really good this year, but DMC goes fast and furious in that game. It was not good for him. But anyway, point is, Ashton Jennings is our number 1 running back. Not that anyone expected anything different. There's a lot we could say. Dalton, you seem like you're ready to say something, so you go ahead first here.
I'm curious where you guys have him rated. In terms of the first round.
So with running backs, with any position, the way that I do my grades in general, but he's gonna probably be a top 5 player in the class in terms of overall grade for me. But I would draft him. My draft grade for him is top 15.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar. I could see him going anywhere from 5 to 20. That area.
Yeah, I had a first round grade on him, says somewhere in like the teens. Like I don't quite have a top 10 grade on him, just because for me to get a top 10 grade, like you gotta have the measurables of like a McCaffrey or a Saquon.
Right, which I think is fair. I think it's
Yeah.
fair from just a draft grade perspective to expect that, because you have to factor that in when we're talking about draft position, not just like
Yeah.
how good the player actually ultimately is.
Yeah.
Um,
To
but
me,
yeah,
similar. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
no, go ahead.
similar comp to Josh Jacobs in terms of like where he should be, in terms of like what he can do. Like, he can be an elite back in this league, but like Jacobs, there's no measurables that make you immediately assume that he is going to be that guy.
Just so you know, Dalton, you're getting a little muffled with your mic. I just want to make sure you
Oh,
knew.
sorry. Thank you.
Um,
So I
yeah,
was
you're
saying
good.
how like
Yeah.
is it better or
Yeah, it's better. Yeah.
So kind of similar to Jacobs in that has all the potential to be an elite back in the league, but the measurables aren't anything super special, but has everything that you'd want. Especially
Yeah.
like Jacobs, the ability to force missed tackles.
Yeah, it's so for me, like the measurables are like ultimately they aren't going to come in as anything crazy, right? I think he's listed at what 5'11", 215. Is that what
Yeah.
his listed height and weight is?
40 times going to be
Um,
okay.
so that's my question ultimately is I wonder how fast he's going to run, because I think to me on tape I see a guy who's like mid to high 4.4s is where I would have him. What
Yeah.
at his best, right? Like when he's really on a track. Um, Now that's not like elite, even at the running back position, but definitely puts him in that category of like this is a truly fast runner in the open
Yeah.
field and can pull away. Ultimately, with him, and I think this is the thing that we all probably would start with, is the contact balance and the ability to bounce off of contact is hilariously good. Like to the point where it's almost like you're like you have to think like these guys must be the worst players on the planet. Like they must all be 15 years old. And it's like no, this he's just better than them. Like firmly better than everyone he plays against. And it's like all right, like because and his ability to consistently, because people will be like, well, if you took away his breakaway yards, he wouldn't be as good. It's like, yeah, do that with every other running back and get back to me about how good they are then. But also, like, this dude had more yards after contact than anyone had yards, I believe, still at the end of the season, if I'm not mistaken. Like, you just, you lose me when you're like, well, if he didn't have these amazing 70-yard runs, he wouldn't be good. It's like, he'd still be good, actually,
Like,
personally.
yeah,
Even if he
uh,
wasn't, like, why would you want him to be great without the best plays that he had? Like, what do you mean by
there's such a silly
that?
argument. It's like he wouldn't be good if he didn't make
When you
good
have like
plays.
50 carries and you're averaging like 9 yards a carry, but you have like 60-yard runs, sure. I'll be like, all right, maybe this is a little bit fluky. This dude might break the rushing record all time. Like, depending on how the Penn State game, he might break that record. You don't do that by being not awesome. Like, I just don't really know what to tell you. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah,
The
it's
contact balance, the tricky thing is, the competition. But I mean, even if it when he does end up in the NFL, even if it drops a little bit, like the amount of tackles he's able to break, he is still going to be a problem to bring down in the NFL. Just the way he moves and
yes,
the way he does just absorb contact so well.
yeah. He just
Yeah.
it's other like the amount of times I've seen him get lit up basically, and the dude takes the worst end of it. It's like how in the world did it's like
Yeah.
It's like he runs with like a
it
force
feels that
field
way
around him,
sometimes.
and
Yeah,
every time like his body's a force field, and people
if they
just
hit
like
that first,
bounce
they
off.
have to knock the force field down before they can hit him. It's stupid.
And
So
like
much
a
fun to watch.
safety at San Diego State isn't that much smaller than an NFL safety. Like, let's be
No,
real.
not nowadays, especially. But
Yeah.
like, it's just
Yeah.
again, like at the end of the day, however you want to view, like however highly you'd want to take him, this or that, he's having a special season in a way that we just don't see very often. And people are like, well, Melvin Gordon had like so. It's like, yeah, well, listen, I know it was in the Big Ten, but like that was when Wisconsin was still dogging dudes in the run game as a run
Yeah.
blocking team. Like he had a great season, but he did not have the same talent to work with that guys like that he did. It just, for me, I think you look at him also like last year was a great pass receiver for them. Great pass protector this year still too. Like he's a three down back. He's not this guy who's just give him the ball and that's all he's gonna do. Like don't ask me to like no, like he can catch 40 balls as a running back. He could be a good pass protector on there. He does not have to come off the field. Like that's I think what people forget about because this year's been so centered on his carries and how many yards he has and everything else. Like yeah, that's the focus, but it's not like he doesn't have all the other attributes that you need to be a three down running back in the NFL. You know, if he didn't, then we wouldn't be having him number one, right? Like you could argue for other guys in that case. Then.
Yeah. If you wanted to use the competition as a red flag, I think the example would be more like Donnell Pumphrey.
Oh, dude.
Right.
Yeah, when he was 170 pounds at San Diego State running for like
that's the
2,000
thing. Like,
yards.
He is not the same back. Like this is an NFL build.
Yeah, let me put it this way: if Gentry said he was coming back next year, the amount of money every Power 5 school in the country would be giving him there's no limit on it. I don't care. Like you're telling me that a Power 5 team wouldn't be like, yeah, let's bring in the best running back in the country. Like
you get more in the portal than any portal quarterback, I think.
I think so, yeah, because he could single-handedly change the direction of your team next year if you have a good enough team. You do not have to have like a top 10 roster, in my opinion, for him to be like valuable enough to bring you into that top 10. Like that's what it comes down to, especially at the college level, right? Where like running backs matter more, they're not as replaceable, especially for the top players compared to some other guys who you might have on the roster. So it's just, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things you could say about Gentry, but dude just is awesome to watch.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, running backs way more fun to watch this week, guys. So that's all I'll say. So next week should still be fun. Now I wanted to make sure, and I'll talk to you guys about this post show, but we'll see like what kind of everybody's doing around that time because it'll be the 30th of December. We'll kind of see what everybody's got going on. But assuming we're back then, we should be doing wide receivers. So we will be jumping into the receiver position, I believe. Okay. So I'm going to double check that because I did make it a while ago. But either way, it should still be a fun group to talk about. They're not as deep as it's been in recent history, which at some point they had to be like not awesome, right? Because receiver classes recently have been kind of ridiculous for the most part. But in general, it's still going to be some more fun stuff. Really, the quarterback position is the least fun group this year, which is unfortunate for the NFL, but kind of fun for people who are tired of quarterbacks a little bit, which I think all of us in some way, shape, or form might be a little bit in some cases. But
we also aren't pretending like I feel like there's some years where we're pretending guys are gonna we're pretending that Will Levis is an NFL starting quarterback.
Listen,
I'm happy that
it was fun for a minute. By the way, we're actually doing, because I forgot my own schedule that I created myself, go figure on that one, is our first of multiple 3-round divisional mock drafts, starting with the NFC South. Ooh. We're going to be doing 3-round mocks for each NFC South team because they stink. Is their ass, guys. That's why. One benched their $100 million quarterback. The other one has a $100 million quarterback that can't get the ball out to anybody because the line is weird sometimes and the defense that sucks. Panthers are like somehow the most fun team to watch maybe at this point, which is so funny because Bryce Young balling all of a sudden, which is awesome.
And the best team in the division is quarterbacked by Baker Mayfield.
Yes, and also the Saints are still there, which I don't know what they've been doing. I hope they have negative points because I need that for fame.
There's a very real chance we see Michael Penix start.
And I can't wait because what else could have happened except for that when they drafted him?
But are the Falcons geniuses for that?
No, they're not. Because you burned $100 million with a match, regardless.
Penix wasn't ready to start.
I like adding Penix.
If your 24-year-old rookie quarterback wasn't ready to start week 1 but is ready to start now, then I don't really give a shit what the situation was. You're bad. It's terrible. Like, get out of here. I'm done with them. Good. Honestly, I hope that Penix is awesome because I want him to be good because I liked watching him. I just didn't think he should be a top 10 pick. But the Falcons do not get credit for drafting quarterback at number 8 by burning $100 million with a match and not having, maybe, I don't know, money to spend around your rookie quarterback you took in the top 10. It'd be nice to have that money not on the books. Going off the books. Like, it's just so funny, dude. That's a show for another day. But anyway, we will be back next week with that, though. Thank you guys for joining me as always.